Prime Minister and Head of Government Dr. Joseph Dion Gute says COVID-19 barrier measures outlined by President Paul Biya in March 2020 will be enforced and steps taken for a COVID-19 vaccine in the days ahead. And as the women prepare to celebrate their day, the National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism and Multiculturalism launched a new national campaign to halt hate speech and xenophobia in the country. And as the cry for the women's fabric grow high, Elite 1 and 2 matches get into play this day, while women on the other side are involved in discussions to celebrate the International Women's Day. Good evening and welcome to Studio 5. I am Benen Bumagana. This is the 7:30 News.
I urge you once again to put on your face masks, to wash your hands regularly, and to consult a physician or any other health personnel if you notice any symptoms. This is the only way to save lives and to curb the spread of the virus.
Welcome back. Consumers have been enjoined to respect COVID-19 prevention measures put in place by government in retail outlets to check the spread of the disease. This was an appeal from the Minister of Trade, Luke BrigadeAntiSardinard, after a tour of some supermarkets in the city to ascertain the respect of COVID-19 barrier measures in these structures. Clarice Aretakan reports.
Fighting against the spread of COVID-19 from the entrance to supermarkets, access is subject to three things: a mask, the use of hydroalcoholic gel, and temperature checks. Officials from the Ministry of Trade are not only making sure that retail outlets are keeping to their own side of the deal, but equally that users are complying with the COVID-19 preventive measures in place in these structures. While there are observations that a number of supermarkets had let down their guard, oftentimes showing complacency, for others the battle against the COVID-19 spread has remained. Harder still, though, is effective physical distancing, an issue which is still a challenge.
People have to take conscience that the virus is there. So we need to protect them, but they have to protect themselves. It's very important, the requirement of wearing of facial mask. You cannot go inside, you cannot enter a supermarket without wearing a mask.
An upsurge in COVID-19 infections in recent months has seen sensitization on responsible behavior intensified. This becomes even more crucial where essential services are required by the population.
Female workers of the National Assembly are deliberating on ways to upgrade their leadership skills and their aptitude at work. This was a roundtable conference on women's rights, institutional achievements and challenges presided over by Honorable Bert Nanga Menang. Representing Mrs. Fadimatu Kavai, Esther Kmer has a roundup of their activities marking Women's Day celebrations.
Born to lead and rule, but restrained from equal access to leadership positions, women need to be tonified to assert themselves.
The width of working hard to become a leader should not just be on women. Institutions should work to promote them. Policy of quota has made it possible for now 61 women to get into the National Assembly.
Women need to enforce their capacity. And we have that problem of gender-based violence, the problem of heritage.
With a 33% female representation at the National Assembly, a projected rise draws on empowerment.
Women should be trained, women should be prepared so that whenever anything comes up in terms of position, women should be at the top.
Apart from presentations on drug abuse and violence, which affect women's well-being, the personnel kept fit in a football match, pitting the veterans and the young recruits.
Football, we can learn the lesson that we can build a very strong team spirit and a very strong love spirit in this country, Cameroon.
The encounter was a victory for the lawmaking institution honoring women.
The Minister of Finance has exhorted his collaborators of the Directorate General of Taxation to double efforts in collecting government's revenue. Minister Louis-Paul Motaze was speaking in Yaoundé during a visit to evaluate the work of the staff at the newly constructed building, which was inaugurated on November 27 last year. Ewane Paulet tells us more.
Guided by the Director General of Taxation, Modest Mopa Fatwang, the Minister of Finance visited the different departments of the 11-story building complex of the Directorate General of Taxation.
4 months ago, we were here with the Prime Minister. It was not an opportunity for me to go deeper into the visit. It's a new financial year, and I had to give them some instructions.
While visiting the Services of Investigation, Internal Audit, the Information Technology Division, Library, Research, and the offices of the Director General and his deputy, the Minister exhorted his collaborators to double efforts in collecting government revenue.
When the personnel is happy, we can hope that the results will follow. They have to meet with our expectations and our obligations. You know that we have a new budget, and the budget 2021 is very important as far as the resources are concerned. I think that they are in a good foot.
The staff have expressed gratitude to government as they now work in spacious and well-equipped offices.
The National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism and Multiculturalism has launched a new national communication campaign against hate speech and xenophobia. The chairman of the commission, Peter Mafani Musonge, granted a press conference today in Yaoundé to explain the contours of the campaign that will last 3 months. Ibneza Akanga brought back this report from the press conference.
In his introductory statement at the press conference, the chairman of the National Commission for the Promotion of Bilingualism and Multiculturalism said that the new national communication campaign is being launched at a time that there is a disturbing recrudescence of hate speech and xenophobia in the country. Peter Mafani Musonge warned that hate speech and xenophobia are serious threats to national unity, living together, social cohesion, national integration, peace, and social stability. The new national communication campaign against hate speech and xenophobia will be carried out within 3 months.
Before the end of May 2021, the Commission intends to especially, 1, capitalize on the activities already carried out or which are in the process of execution by the various stakeholders. 2, organize a colloquium on hate speech and xenophobia in Cameroon so as to be able to zero in on the stakes and challenges. 3, carry out awareness-raising campaigns against the scourge in all the regions of the country.
Peter Mafani Musonge called on other actors to join forces so that they stem the tide.
Prime Minister and Head of Government, Chief Dr. Joseph Dion Gute, has recalled that the wearing of masks in public places, the prohibition of gatherings of more than 50 persons, and the suspension of missions abroad for public and para-public personnel shall be enforced in the country to prevent a re-escalation of COVID-19 transmission. The PM also indicated steps are being taken to acquire COVID-19 vaccines to protect the population and shall be administered on voluntary basis when the time comes. Here is the complete declaration made by the Prime Minister and Head of Government, Dr. Joseph Dion Gute.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by saying that this statement is in compliance with the instructions of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Paul Biya. As you are probably aware, within the framework of the implementation of government's response strategy, on 17th March 2020, the head of state issued a series of restrictive measures aimed at limiting the spread of COVID-19 in our country. Although these restrictions were stringent, they were beneficial. The actions implemented by government helped to curb the spread of the pandemic in our country and to save lives. To ease patient care, isolation units for COVID-19 infected persons, and specialized treatment centers were opened. The control of the pandemic led the President of the Republic to decide on a gradual easing of certain restrictive measures. As a result, on 30 April 2020, bars, restaurants, and leisure facilities were allowed to open after 6 p.m. Pupils and students in examination classes in primary and secondary education, as well as university students, learners in vocational centers and professional schools, were able to resume in-person classes from 1st June 2020. This decision enabled them to complete the 2019-2020 school and academic year and to continue their training for the current 2020-2021 year. Moreover, considering the effects of this pandemic on the national economic and social fabric, the head of state decided to grant facilities to companies in difficulty and to the most modest households. The application of these measures helped to lay the groundwork for our economic recovery and to regain a certain social balance in the face of this harmful disease. Ladies and gentlemen, despite the efforts made to curb the spread of COVID-19 in our country, there has been a resurgence of the pandemic in many of our cities in recent weeks. Updated statistics show that 34,887 patients have already been cured of this disease since it first appeared in our country. However, in the space of 1 week, more than 3,000 new cases were recorded, bringing the overall number of people testing positive for COVID-19 to 38,988. Over the same period, that is 1 week, 37 patients died as a result of this disease, bringing the total number of deaths to 588. There is every reason to believe that the deterioration in the epidemiological situation that we are observing today is largely due to the laxity in the application of safety measures and to the failure to comply with the restrictive measures taken on 17 March 2020, some of which are still in force. Indeed, a very large majority of our compatriots gather carelessly in public or private spaces, disregarding the rules of social distancing and without taking into account the limit of 50 people for any gathering. Many no longer even wear masks, which is compulsory in all public places. Some even continue to think that COVID-19 is a pure invention or that it exists only in other countries. Such behavior is irresponsible and favors the spread of the virus, especially at a time when many variants have been discovered in certain countries. This disease is real. It continues to wreak havoc among our loved ones and strikes brutally at people with comorbidity. In this context, government has an obligation to protect each and every one of its citizens, despite the reluctance or denial of the reality of this disease by some of our compatriots. I therefore seize this opportunity to remind everyone that the measures taken on 17th March 2020, which were not expressly lifted by the President of the Republic, are and remain in force. They include the prohibition of gatherings of more than 50 people throughout the national territory, working remotely and using electronic means of communication as much as possible, especially for the organization of meetings where social distancing cannot be observed, the suspension of missions abroad for members of government and public and para-public sector agents, except in the case of express derogation. The systematic wearing of masks in all public places and respect for social distancing. Considering the significant increase in the number of cases of contamination, and in order to ensure the effective application of the measures already enacted, administrative authorities have been instructed by the Minister of Territorial Administration to ensure, within the framework of the administrative police missions, that hand washing or the use of hand sanitizers is reinstated at the entrance of all establishments open to the public, including places of worship. The ministers in charge of education and the Minister of Trade would also ensure the application of this measure, respectively, in schools and universities, as well as in shopping centers. Safety measures must be complied with in all circumstances and in all places, including in open markets, in meeting places such as bus stations, taxi and motorbike pickup points, as well as in public transport. I would like to stress that access to any establishment open to the public will henceforth be subject to the wearing of a mask. Also, screening at air, sea, and land borders have been stepped up to reduce the risk of importing variants of COVID-19 in our country. Large gatherings and risky behavior are prohibited. I particularly insist on the imperative need to rigorously respect the limit of 50 persons, as well as safety measures during meetings, ceremonies, events, and other official or private celebrations, especially when these meetings take place in closed spaces, in order to avoid the emergence of clusters. We must not lose sight of the fact that each individual protects himself and protects others. With a view to strengthening our prevention mechanism, the government, on the instructions of the head of state, has taken steps with partner organizations to acquire vaccines against COVID-19. More than 1 million doses of the vaccine will be available in the very near future. Once these vaccines become available, a vaccination plan shall be set up and vaccination shall be voluntary. I would like to note that although vaccination is voluntary and not compulsory, the government encourages all Cameroonians to be vaccinated when the time comes, in order to acquire the immunity that will enable our community to protect itself against COVID-19 for a return to normalcy. While waiting for the outcome of ongoing steps, personal discipline, as well as the strengthening of individual and collective prevention measures are the most effective means of halting the spread of this disease in our country and preserving the lives of our fellow citizens. I therefore invite all of us to mobilize in solidarity, especially community relays such as religious and traditional authorities, opinion leaders, political leaders, associations, and trade unions. Let us all observe the directives of the head of state concerning the fight against COVID-19. Let us work together to fight this pandemic that disrupts our social balance and the realization of our development projects. Let us rise and bar the way to the spread of this disease by respecting basic hygiene rules, by systematically wearing a mask in all public places, by respecting social distancing as much as possible, and avoiding popular gatherings. This is a collective requirement, but also, and above all, a civic duty which transcends our personal, religious, or philosophical beliefs. I thank you very much.
The Prime Minister and Head of Government, Joseph Dion Gute, recalling that the wearing of masks in public places and other barrier measures against COVID will be reinforced, and also indicating that steps are being taken to acquire COVID-19 vaccines to protect the population and shall be administered on voluntary basis. The Prime Minister also indicated that for in just 1 week, 3,000 new cases were tested and 37 deaths recorded. Now, Baldwin Samaf and Camer looks at the disturbing COVID figures in Cameroon in this report.
The figures are alarming, the situation disturbing, and the reality is visible. The coronavirus is among us with far-reaching consequences telling. Just within 1 week in Cameroon, 3,000 Cameroonians have been tested positive for COVID-19, taking the total number of infected persons to 38,988. A bitter reality it is to accept the non-respect of outlined barrier measures by Cameroonians is the order of the day, and this lackluster attitude is responsible for the increase in the number of persons who have died of COVID-19. Recently, 35 Cameroonians died of the coronavirus, taking the total number of deaths in Cameroon to 588. From every indication, this deviant behavior must stop. Every life lost is a bitter pill to swallow, and as every responsible Cameroonian, there is need for a change of behavior to embrace a collective endeavor, that of fighting against a common enemy, the coronavirus. With over 2,000 active cases existing in the society and over 200 patients in the different treatment centers in Cameroon, these figures must sound as a warning bell to all and sundry that the fight against the killer disease is a collective one.
And this communique coming in from the Minister of Secondary Education. The Minister of Secondary Education hereby informs the national and international community that owing to the rise in the number of cases tested positive to COVID-19 over the past few days, the Minister or the Ministry of Secondary Education intends, without further delay, to systematically administer COVID-19 screening tests to all students, as well as administrative and teaching staff of secondary schools and teacher training colleges nationwide. This screening campaign aims at reducing the cases of infection and to allow for the serene continuation of the 2020-2021 school year. The screening campaign shall be carried out with the support of the Ministry of Public Health. Henceforth, access to school campuses shall be conditioned on the presentation of a recent COVID-19 test with a negative result. The Minister of Secondary Education looks forward to the understanding and full collaboration of each stakeholder of the entire education community. Done in Yaoundé on the 4th of March 2021. Signed the Minister of Secondary Education, Nalova Lyonga, PhD. Now, in prelude to the International Women's Day celebration on March 8th, the women of the Chamber of Agriculture organized a series of activities in line with the COVID-19 theme. From sports to health education, the women were given some tips on how to thrive in the workplace in the COVID-19 world. Here is an excerpt of Gwendoline Langmi, staff of the Chamber of Agriculture, Fisheries, Livestock and Forestry, interviewed by Cynthia Saptala.
We, the women of CAPEF, have decided to have a talk on the issues surrounding this coronavirus. So we have decided, firstly, to do some sporting activities that will keep us in good health. We have noticed that this second wave of coronavirus is more serious. That's why we had to invite somebody who is a specialist to explain to us why it is so, and so that we can be able to take precautions.
Talking about the Bayam-Sellans, that is the petit traders in Yaoundé who have held an activity in Yaoundé, and all of this is still in connection of the International Women's Day. We follow this report by Victor Siga.
First Extraordinary General Assembly, members of the Bayam-Selam Association, best known by its French acronym as B, brainstormed on the urgent need to revamp the activities of retailers hard hit by the deadly COVID-19 pandemic. The come together was graced by members from the diaspora whose success stories stirred hope in the peers. This first ever extraordinary General Assembly of the Bayam Selam Association, which works on upgrading the standard of living of retailers, got a push from the government, which acknowledges the pivotal role the informal sector plays in economic growth.
Oh, sorry for that mix-up. We'll surely be coming back to this report by the Bayam Selams as they prepare to celebrate the International Women's Day. The remains of the Secretary General of the Ministry of Territorial Administration, Pierre Esumba, has been coffined at the mortuary of the Yaoundé Referral Hospital. Pierre Esumba died on January 13 in Paris, France, during a medical evacuation. Kylian Datndifo reports on today's Friday's coffining ceremony.
Born on March 24, 1967, Pierre Esumba died on January 30, 2021 at the age of 54. The senior civil administrator's coffining ceremony Friday at the mortuary of the Yaoundé Referral Hospital brought family, friends, sympathizer, top administrative and other very important personalities to pay their last tribute. Prominent among the high-profile personalities were the Minister of Territorial Administration, his last immediate hierarchy, where the Knight of the Order of Valor served as Secretary General for 11 years since 2010. The Minister Delegate at the Presidency in charge of Defense, the President of the Regional Executive for the Center, also stood out among the VIPs. The family of the late board member of the CRTV, who served in several portfolios at the Prime Minister's Office and Ministry of Territorial Administration, found solace in many who turned out to mourn with them. At the mortuary and at the funeral service at the Our Lady of Victory Cathedral in Yaoundé, burial takes place on Saturday, March 6, in his hometown, Nkolbien, in Mefu Anakono Division.
Before we go, you should be asking yourself where to go to this weekend to have fun. Witty Minstrel and his popular song, We Are Proud of Who We Are, will be singing for you while Mr. Leo will be offering his voice to his lovers. Now, where to go to? Here is Victor Cigar again.
30 years making music non-stop. It is a celebration. Ania Ozue does this in grand style tonight at La Falaise Diamond in Douala. Get set for a show to remember with Dinali and Zangalewa at 8 p.m. Still tonight in Yaoundé, join Mr. Leo and other artists at the Blue Snack Bar in Obili at 7 p.m. to celebrate the Nto culture. Mr. Leo, Kamini amongst other famous Cameroonian artists, will be staging at grand opening in Bonamosadi, Douala, time 6 p.m. Saturday. Still on Saturday, Witty Minstrel, Bendeka, Petit Pays, Coco Argenté, amongst others, tease you on Women's Day Fever at La Place du Gouvernement in Douala as from 4 p.m. Boytak is back on a media tour in Yaoundé with his new album Poto Poto and will be guest on Tam Tam Weekend. Go along with your mass as you enjoy the weekend.
Let's talk sports now. Weekend sports preview. Young Sports Academy of Bamenda will take on Tone Kalara Club on Sunday for their 2020-2021 season opener. In the Elite 2 division this Saturday, Le Power of Douala will clash against Unisport of the Opankam in one of the one fixtures. Here is Romoyo Kenyi with the complete pairings.
Mouth wore 3 crackers to animate the weekend for football lovers in the country. Priority this Saturday goes to Elite 2 Championship as from 3 p.m. At the Ndumbe Omar Stadium in Ngaoundéré, local site in Ngaoundéré FC will march up forces amid the police FAP of Yaoundé. While Rasa FC of Bafoussam will take on Dynamo on home soil. In Pool B, Stade FC of Beto will challenge Fofazou. And Foncha Street of Bamenda will welcome After of Krebe. And Leopard of Douala alias the Bana Banjo will take on Unisport of the Opankam. In the top tier, an advanced day one hostility pitting Colombe Sportif of Jan Lobo and New Stars of Douala is slated this Saturday. On Sunday, Pool B matches will continue with Young Sport Academy of Bamenda USA hosting Tone Kalara Club of Yaoundé, Tekase, Canon of Yaoundé de Mekop Mangonda will challenge Astrop Douala aka Le Brésilien de Bepanda. In Pool A, Djeko FC of Banjul against Union of Douala, Fauve Azur vs Stade Renard, Bambutos FC of Bouda opposing Avion Academy of Cam, and AS Fortuna squaring Eding Sport of the Leke are some of the prominent fixtures of the day.
And it's without sports reports that we come to the end of this edition of the 7:30 news. Right after these, Karine Olivier will be right here for the news in French. That is at 8:30. Have a good night. See you tomorrow.
Malgré nos efforts, despite our efforts, COVID-19 plunged many families into mourning and seriously hampered the functioning of our economy and society.
Kajibia brand and the Fatula Kaji Defoso Foundation care about you. 50 million francs CFA offered to our brothers and sisters